Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special edition of Harwich Mariners pregame. I'm Tyler Henry, joined alongside, as always, by Colin Casey, and we're here at Veterans Field a little bit early today. I'd like to thank you once again for tuning in and get things broken down. Harwich ended their season a few days ago against the Brewster Whitecaps, already having clinched a playoff spot. It was a 4-4 game in which Harwich tied with the Brewster Whitecaps to finish their season at 21-21-2. And Colin, that was good enough to get the 4 seed in the East. They are facing off today at Veterans Field against the Chatham Anglers team that played them really well early in the season. The season series between these two is even at 3-3, but when you really take a step back and look at it, this feels like the kind of game and the kind of series that Harwich has a bit of an edge in, doesn't it?
It certainly does, especially with the way that Harwich has been playing baseball over the month of July. It was a really rough June, and there were a lot of question marks as to whether this team is even going to make the playoffs, with Brewster usually ahead of them during the first months of the season, but Whitecaps kind of stumbled. Harwich took advantage of it, and they found themselves into the playoffs with a couple of huge victories over the Brewster Whitecaps to close off the year. So as far as the way they've kind of played as of late compared to Chatham, it looks like the Mariners have certainly been playing a lot better baseball, with Chatham knowing that they made the playoffs kind of taking their foot off the gas a little bit, and that was very evident in that 11-0 victory right here at Veterans Field for the Harwich Mariners. Chatham didn't really seem all that interested in playing quality baseball, so we'll see if things change here tonight. Connor McCullough on the mound for the Harwich Mariners. We'll see if he can continue the really strong July he's had. He even had a complete game, or an 8-inning performance of 10 strikeouts against Chatham back at White House Field. So this is a guy who's seen a lot of success against Chatham. We'll see if he can do it again tonight.
We'll get into that pitching matchup here in just a minute, but let's first look at what these two teams have done over the course of their last 10 games and just the kind of momentum that they'll be taking into the postseason. You mentioned Chatham really kind of not just let off the gas, but they seem to get out the car and let it completely roll altogether, as they are 1-6 in their last 7 games. They finished their year 4-6 in their last 10, and during that span, they are hitting a dismal 188 as a team. 57 hits, 28 RBIs, and just 3 home runs, whereas Harwich has really kind of ramped it up over the course of their last 10 games. They finished the year 5-3-2. They had a batting average as a team of 269 and an ERA to go along with it, very, very low. So again, this is a Harwich team that feels like it's trending in the right and good direction, opposite of what the Chatham Anglers have done throughout the course of the back end of the season. And as you mentioned, Colin, the pitching matchup is going to be fascinating today. Connor McCullough comes into today's game having pitched in 6 games. 4 of those were starts. He has a 1.05 ERA through 25 innings pitched, 29 strikeouts, and only 8 walks. And against Chatham, he's even better this year, as throughout 12 complete innings, he's given up just 5 hits and 1 run. What does Chatham have to do to buy a hit off of this guy?
Well, first of all, I think you got to give a lot of credit to the Harwich Mariners for the way they have had Connor McCullough come into this team. He started out as a long reliever, and then they kind of worked him into a starting role, and that transition has been nothing but smooth. But looking at Chatham, this is a guy that they really struggled against in that game at White House Field, and I think the huge difference in this one is to be a little bit more patient. We know McCullough does throw a lot of strikes, but the key is to not swing at anything that is even, a couple of feet off the plate. Anything close, sometimes later in the game you kind of want to protect the plate a little bit, but early in the count, early innings, make him throw a lot of pitches, get his pitch count up, and try to maybe get some runners on base and play some situational baseball. That's kind of what teams have had to do this year to beat the Harwich Mariners, is to play situational baseball.
Connor McCullough's first task will be facing off against a Chatham lineup that, again, has struggled off of him so far this year, but they've also struggled as a team with a very top-heavy lineup over the course of July, and that's something that's become more and more apparent over the course of these last couple of games. When you look at this team against the Harwich Mariners, they have a couple of guys that have really hit Harwich well. A couple that come to mind are Houston Morrill, who's 6 for 16, Jamal O'Gwin, who's 4 for 13, Jorge Arenas, 4 for 13 himself, but you get to the bottom of the order, and it's a lot of guys who have really struggled this year. It's guys like Keaton Rice and Brady Smith, who are both 0 for. It's Ben Ramirez and Kendrick Calilau, who are both 1 for 15, and it's Caden Polkovich, who, while he's been one of the best players on this team, is just 4 for 14 against the Mariners this year. So it's going to be interesting to see how this lineup, who typically doesn't hit against Harwich very well, will do against the Mariners. And Harwich has been in the same boat, with the exception of that 11-0 game. These have typically been very gritty, very defensive pitching duels between these two teams. And Colin, you wonder whether or not that will happen with Daniel Fetterman out there on the bump. A very interesting choice for the Chatham A's, as Fetterman comes into this game the same number of innings pitched as Connor McCullough this year, but a 5.76 ERA, and he has given up 16 earned runs compared to just the 4 of McCullough. A guy who's been prone to getting bounced around a little bit this year, isn't he?
Yeah, not just that. He's 1-3 on the season, so it's not like Chatham's been winning any of those starts, and he's gotten roughed up in his most recent outing, including where he just didn't get the job done. But The 3 starts before that, he went 15 innings and allowed just 5 runs in those 15 innings. So if he's able to bounce back to the form that he had been before that rough outing, we could really see another pitcher's duel. But as you mentioned, the Chatham lineup, not a lot of success outside of Houston Morrill against Harwich pitching. The big one is Caden Polkovich, of course. You said 2 of 19, but 10 strikeouts, so he hasn't even been putting the ball in play, and that's a guy who has just been driving in runs left and right, 28 RBIs on the season. He's really going to have to get the job done if he wants to give his team a chance here tonight, along with the rest of the heart of the lineup. Ben Ramirez just 1 of 15 as well against the Mariners this season.
So let's go through the season series. Of course, everything's tied up right now at 3-3 between the Harwich Mariners and the Chatham Anglers. And it started in Game 1 where Chatham won 5-0. Of course, everybody remembers the Paxton Wallace 2-run home run in that game. But 4 of the 5 runs allowed in that game were by Connor Yoder and Devin Dunn, 2 guys who were on temp contracts who are no longer with the team. Then in Game 2, Harwich took an early 2-0 lead in the first and second inning, and then Chatham scored 1 in the 5th, 1 in the 7th, and 1 in the 8th to win a painful come-from-behind victory and take the season series to 2-0. Since then, Harwich has looked exceptionally well, including a 2-0 shutout of the Chatham A's at home on Fox, where the only runs came from a Nico Cavadas 2-run home run, and Connor McCullough came out and threw 8 scoreless innings, 10 strikeouts, no walks. Of course, the game here at Veterans Field, where Chatham was able to get a 6-4 victory courtesy of a Jorge Arenas home run, and then Games 5 and 6, where you will hear the case made by some people that at this point, Chatham had secured a playoff spot. They weren't all that concerned about winning, but they did throw a solid lineup out there, and Harwich really silenced the bats. Chatham scored just 1 run in those last 2 games, while Harwich scored a massive 16, including an 11-run game in the 11-0 blowout of Chatham come Game 6. So, the interesting thing about this season series, Colin, is that while Harwich is 3-3 against Chatham this year, they've looked really good all season long, and more importantly, they've out-hit the Chatham A's in 5 of those 6 games, including 2 of the losses. So they've really been able to put runs up on the board against this team, and that's going to be big with how well the offense has been playing lately.
Yeah, and offense in general is going to be the X factor in this series. We know both of these teams have exceptional pitching staffs. The big difference, though, is who's going to be able to get those key runs. And so far over the last couple of games, it's been all Harwich, that 5-1 victory at home, and then the 11-0 victory on the road in the home and home. So we'll see if Chatham can kind of get that spark going offensively, but we haven't really seen it a lot this season from them. Harwich, on the other hand, is probably playing their best baseball offensively all season long over the last couple of weeks, with guys like Chris Lanzilli getting hot, even guys like Hal Hughes at the bottom of the order with 4 RBIs over his last 8 games. So Harwich is kind of in a better place offensively as of right now, but once you get to the playoffs, it's a brand new, different animal, and we'll see if Chatham is up for the task and can beat the Mariners for the 2nd straight season in the playoffs.
Of course, Chatham taking a 2-0 sweep over the Harwich Mariners last year, and again, 2 completely different rosters, and we even feel like it's been a different Harwich roster between June and July. It's been an offensive explosion for the Mariners, and with that being said, let me ask you, who do you think, if you had to pick one player that's going to make the biggest difference tonight, on either side, who do you think it is, and what do you think the biggest key to Harwich's game today will be?
Well, I think the one player for Harwich that you have to look out for is obviously Chris Lanzilli, 7 of 9 against Chatham this season with 5 RBIs, and that doesn't even take into account how well he's done over his last 10 games. He has 16 of his last 29, which is an absurd clip. 4 home runs over that span, 12 runs batted in 9 games, so Lanzilli, the big X factor, I think, and then you have to go with the other 3-hitter, and that is Caden Polkovich, another guy who drives and runs left and right, but we talked about it before, doesn't have a lot of success against Harwich. He's going to really have to turn things around if he wants to give his team a chance in this series.
So we will step away, and when we come back, we'll have the first pitch of the game. Stay tuned. At about 7 o'clock, we will start a new live stream for the actual game, but once again, I'd like to say thank you for tuning in to the Harwich Mariners playoff pregame here on the Harwich Mariners Radio Network.